Littlefinger creates chaos and sees that as a ladder to more power, but he also has a plan. What is it, and what does that mean we can expect him to be doing next in A Song of Ice and Fire? Hi everyone, this is Robert. Welcome to Deep Geek. On this channel we do deep dives, lore explainers and breakdowns into the greatest fantasy worlds ever. A Song of Ice and Fire, The Lord of the Rings, The Witcher and more. By the time we meet Peter Baelish in A Song of Ice and Fire, he has already climbed a long way. He was born the son of a very minor lord, very minor. The Baelish's lands were little more than a few acres of rocky outcrop on the far northeastern corner of the Vale, but when we meet him, he is master of coin for the entire realm, with huge personal wealth, a spy network, business interests, and a seat on the small council. He also had an ongoing secret relationship with Lysa Arryn, the wife of the Hand of the King. When her husband, Jon Arryn, tries to send her son Robert to be fostered elsewhere, Littlefinger provides the poison that she uses to kill him. While Lysa's motivations here appear to be about attachment to her young son and obsessive love for Littlefinger, Littlefinger himself was playing a more complex game. The situation in King's Landing at the time was getting quite fraught. Varys was secretly planning a coup. I'll do a video on his Masterplan at some point too. And Jon Arryn and Stannis were on the verge of discovering the truth about Joffrey, Myrcella and Tommen's parentage. Added to which, Littlefinger had a few scores of his own to settle. Ned Stark for being married to Catelyn, the woman Peter loved, and the Tullys more broadly. Hoster Tully had forced Lysa to abort her child with Littlefinger years earlier and thrown him out of Riverrun in disgrace. So the first phase of Littlefinger's plan was to make a little chaos while getting some revenge for perceived past slights, and hopefully use that chaos to seize some opportunities for his own advantage. At the heart of this lies Littlefinger's central modus operandi. When the realm was in chaos, he backed himself to make the best of the opportunities that would present themselves. So he often defaults to sowing a little lie here and there to create that chaos and climb that ladder. Climb the ladder to what, though, is a good question. Basically, it is to more power, winning the Game of Thrones and the personal life he wants, which is shorthand for having Catelyn Stark, or Tully, to himself. He was obsessed with her. Basically, all the things he didn't have as a child, although he quickly transferred his seedy obsession to Sansa, who reminded him of her when she was younger. So, Phase 1. Murder Jon Arryn and get Lysa to tell her sister that the Lannisters did it. Frame Tyrion for the assassination attempt on Bran, and show Ned the evidence about Jaime and Cersei. Cat capturing Tyrion was an unexpected twist, but Littlefinger knew that the honourable Ned would have to stand up for what was right, at which point he could betray him and whisper in Joffrey's ear the idea that Ned should be beheaded. Before you knew it, the Lannisters and the Starks were at each other's throats. The subsequent civil war obviously offered lots of opportunities for advancement. He led a diplomatic mission to Highgarden to negotiate an alliance between the Lannisters and the Tyrells, who had, let's not forget, the largest army in Westeros, and brought them back to King's Landing, linking up with Tywin. It was this army that arrived just in time to turn the tide in the Battle of the Blackwater. His reward was to be made Lord of Harrenhal and Lord Paramount of the Trident. The Riverlands were a complete mess at the time, and as far as we know, Littlefinger never even went to Harrenhal, but suddenly he was at the high table by right of nobility, one of the most senior nobles in the realm, not just because his ability with money earned him a seat on the small council. So we have to say that Phase 1 of Littlefinger's plan undoubtedly worked. He had advanced hugely in social standing. His rival Ned Stark was dead. He may have lost Cat, not that he ever really had her, of course, but Sansa was by his side, and he had the trust of the Lannisters, who were in control of King's Landing. At which point, we move on to Phase 2. Littlefinger now has the social standing to suggest the thing he had been denied as a child, marriage to Lysa Arryn. She is now available, of course, now her husband is dead. It's not that he particularly wants to marry her, per se, but it would right a childhood wrong in his mind and bring more power, being the stepfather of the child Lord of the Vale and husband to the Lady Regent brings power of its own. But what he does want now is Sansa. He has been obsessed with her since he first met her, but how to get her? Well, he had a few problems to overcome. First, she was married now to Tyrion, and second, she remained an important bargaining tool for the Lannisters. They would never let her leave King's Landing while the kingdom remained in such turmoil. So Peter Baelish launched a complex plan that, again, went almost exactly to plan. It was launching chaos once more, but knowing exactly what he wanted from it. Joffrey and Marjorie's wedding was at hand, and he knew that Olenna Tyrell, the Queen of Thorns, would never allow her granddaughter to marry someone like Joffrey, so he hatched a plot with her to assassinate Joffrey on his wedding day. The Purple Wedding, as it became known. But first, he persuaded Tywin to send him to the Vale to attempt to woo Lysa Arryn. The Vale had been noticeably absent from the war so far, and Tywin needed to get them to bend the knee, and Littlefinger, as we've seen, has shown an apparently unimpeachable track record of loyalty to the Lannisters, betraying the Starks and bringing the Tyrells on board. But Peter doesn't leave immediately, he only pretends to. Instead, he arranges for a troop of dwarves to perform at the wedding feast, knowing it would annoy Tyrion and force a public confrontation with Joffrey, who would love it. Meanwhile, Olenna poisoned Joffrey with the poison smuggled in on Sansa's hairnet. This immediately made Tyrion the prime suspect for Joffrey's murder, certainly in Cersei's eyes, and Sansa was implicated too. Sir Dontos, who Littlefinger had been manipulating to befriend Sansa, hinting at ways to escape King's Landing, persuaded her to come with him to Littlefinger's ship while everything was still in uproar, and Littlefinger set sail for the Vale with Sansa. Sir Dontos was killed. Sansa was by his side, her husband implicated for murder, and Baelish himself had the full support of the crown to marry Lysa Arryn, who would definitely say yes and claim power there. That final part of the plan happens quickly, perhaps even quicker than Littlefinger was wanting. Lysa Arryn married him and declared him Lord Protector of the Vale, de facto ruler. So let's take stock of where Peter has got to at the end of his second phase. He is now the de facto ruler of the Vale and Lord Paramount of the Riverlands, indisputably one of the most powerful men in the realm. And he not only has Lysa Arryn doting on him, but also Sansa close at hand and entirely reliant on him. She is now installed in the Vale as Elaine Stone, his bastard daughter. Where can he go from here? Well, more power and closer to Sansa. That's the plan. That's always the plan. Perhaps at this point he does, however, get a little ahead of himself. He kisses Sansa, and Lysa sees him do it. She is jealous and tries to throw Sansa out of the moon door. Littlefinger intervenes, and Lysa ends up being thrown out of the moon door. I have a feeling that what transpires here will be quite important later on. Before she dies, Lysa basically tells Sansa all of Littlefinger's lies from the first half of Book 1. If she was ever unsure whether Peter Baelish really had betrayed her family, she now knows everything. And surely, when she's not in his control and is perhaps back in the safety of her family, she will use that. Anyway, that's for the future. Because although he may not have planned it, Peter Baelish has once more got the chaos he so loves. He manages to frame the murder of Lysa itself on Marillion, a minstrel, but is soon confronted by 6 powerful Lords of the Vale, naming themselves the Lords Declarant, who oppose him, basically assuming full power after Lysa's death. Which brings us to Phase 3, securing his hold over the Vale. It would take a whole other video here to go through all the intricacies of Vale politics that Littlefinger is exploiting, and at the point we are at in the books, he's still only partway through this process, but basically he is trying to peel off the 6 Lords Declarant one by one. He starts by getting a loyalist, Lyn Corbray, to force the Lords Declarants to give him a year's grace. Then he buys up the debts of House Waynwood and persuades Lady Waynwood to match Harry Harding, her ward and the heir apparent to Robert Arryn, to Sansa, who everyone thinks is Littlefinger's bastard daughter. Baelish then mutters darkly about how Lord Redfort is old and near death, and Lord Hunter may soon be murdered by his own brothers, so both of them are probably not long for this world. Lord Nestor Royce is granted hereditary rights over the Gates of the Moon, seemingly as a bribe, and gifted some rather splendid tapestries. And Lords Belmore and Grafton seem to be conspiring with Littlefinger to stockpile grain and aggressively target the other part of House Royce, Bronze Yon himself. Surely within the year, All the Lords Declarant will accept Littlefinger's absolute rule, with perhaps only Jon Royce doing so grudgingly, another one to watch for the future story. Which brings us to what happens in The Winds of Winter and A Dream of Spring. Well, Littlefinger does tell Sansa what his plan is right at the end of A Feast for Crows. We obviously shouldn't always take him at his word, but given his infatuation with her, there's no reason to think that what he tells her is not true here, even if there are other elements he isn't revealing. This is what he says, talking about Harry Harding, Robert Arryn's heir apparent. Sansa is speaking first. Harry is Robert's heir. If Robert were to die... Peter arched an eyebrow. When Robert dies. Our poor, brave, sweet Robin is such a sickly boy. It is only a matter of time. When Robert dies, Harry the heir becomes Lord Harold, Defender of the Vale and Lord of the Eyrie. John Arryn's bannermen will never love me, nor our silly, shaking Robert, but they will love their young falcon. And when they come together for his wedding, and you come out, with your long auburn hair, clad in a maiden's cloak of white and grey, with a direwolf emblazoned on the back, why, every knight in the Vale will pledge his sword to win you back your birthright. So, those are your gifts from me, my sweet Sansa, Harry, the Eyrie, and Winterfell. Sansa's birthright that Littlefinger says every knight in the Vale will pledge themselves to recovering is being the Lady of Winterfell. At this moment in time, as far as everyone is aware, Robb was killed at the Red Wedding. Jon is still a bastard son, so not in the line of succession. Bran and Rickon are both dead, killed by Theon, so it is thought, and Arya, well, Arya herself is missing. The person everyone thinks is Arya is actually Jane Poole. Littlefinger married her to Ramsay Bolton in the books rather than Sansa, so the only Stark left standing is Sansa. Littlefinger is planning on taking the Knights of the Vale, who have stayed out of all of the conflicts in this war so far, to the north, to install Sansa as Lady there. Personally, I can't see Harry Harding surviving long past his wedding, and I can definitely see Littlefinger overstepping the mark with Sansa in a way that he will regret when she is safe back home and all of the Starks everyone thinks are dead suddenly start appearing by her side, and in powered-up versions of themselves like Bran and Arya will be, for example. But in his mind, where we currently are at in the story, Phase 4 of Littlefinger's plan will be surely the last. Claim the Vale through Sansa's marriage to Harry the heir, then win the North in Sansa's name, and through her being a Tully and his claim as Lord Paramount, rule over the Riverlands too. That would be 3 of the 7 kingdoms, the North, the Vale of Arryn, and the Riverlands. An astonishing rise in just a few short years for a very, very minor lord. But ultimately, I suspect that his lies will catch up with him. Sansa is learning the Game of Thrones all the time, and she now knows so many of his secrets. When she is Lady of Winterfell, if she becomes Lady of Winterfell, I expect Jon to be back by her side, and Bran will return from the far north, and probably even Arya return from Braavos. In King's Landing, and even in the Vale, Littlefinger was in his own element. He could play one person off against another, lie to one person to provoke a reaction in another, but in Winterfell, as winter falls, he will be as out of his element as Ned Stark was in King's Landing. Littlefinger rose to power on lies, duplicity, and double-crossing. His downfall will be brought about by truth, honesty, and loyalty. If you would like to see more videos unpacking the story behind the story of A Song of Ice and Fire, please click on the playlist on the left of your screen now. Or to support this channel and get access to some exclusive benefits, please click on the link to my Patreon page on the right of your screen. That's all for this time. Thanks for watching. I'll see you again soon.